Welcome back to another episode of MITA Unshackled, and thank you for joining us here in the studio. Murray Stein from the Halo Infusions. Your screen went off here. Got to push all kinds of technical difficulties. We're okay.
Shout out Halo.
I'm here with Destiny Blanco, and we have Woodstock, the soul of MITA, and Yoda. He's leaning up against Yoda today, the wisdom of MITA. But we're here with a very special guest. Murray, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is a thrill for me because I get to interview you and talk a little bit about the history of the industry. You are one of the OGs. Let's start with your involvement in the industry, how you first got started. Then we'll get a little bit into the products that you guys are doing and what Halo is, and then a little bit about what's happening next.
You bet. Really, I got started with some of the early folks. We knew about the initiative back in 2010. My partner at the time had an opportunity with a particular property, so we decided to make some applications. As we got more deeply involved in it, we ended up becoming connected to a number of other players. So at the end, we wrote 13 applications, and we won about 8 of those.
This was Gordon Hamilton Dispensary Network Association.
Yes, Gordon. Yes.
All the OGs.
What year was this?
This would have been 2010, 2011.
2011.
Yeah. Passed the Medical Marijuana Act passed in November 2010. The Dispensary Networking Group, about 400 great individuals, got together in 2011. Everybody's trying to figure it out. In 2012, the state finally issued a process. You guys won a license in
Southern Arizona, Tucson, just out on the edge of Tucson. It was an unusual location. It was sort of more or less remote. And we ended up able to get an agreement with the local Shell station, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Shell's going to hate me saying that, but anyway, the facility worked out well.
It was 10 years ago.
Yes, 10 years ago. They actually had a kitchen there that was a sandwich shop of some sort. So we saw an early opportunity to get involved in infused products. Those were the very early days. And we ended up being the first approved kitchen in the state.
This is 2013.
2013.
I remember this. You guys were
January 11th or something like that. We got approved.
I think you guys were like one of the first 3 dispensaries in the state of Arizona.
We were the third. We were behind.
See, I know. I did my research.
Arizona Organics and Saints, Southern Arizona Integrated Therapies, was in Tucson. We were the third.
Oh, Ruben, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Myers.
Yes.
Bill Myers.
Yes.
Bill Myers and Ruben.
Yes.
Shout out to you guys if you're still around.
And you guys were just making gummies at that time?
No, at that time, actually, we didn't get into gummies for quite a while. We started with chocolate bars. We started with...
one of the first brands of Arizona.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Not just one of the first dispensaries,
Correct.
but first brands.
We were among the first brands, yes. I say because some of our brands have changed over time. Some have been renamed. Some have been made more appropriate, but they've basically all been there. We started out the door at the beginning with making a variety of edibles. We felt like we needed to serve the industry. There wasn't really a whole lot of folks you could buy infused products from. Mm-hmm. So that caused us to develop your standard brownie products. We also developed some Rice Krispie treats.
I remember the Rice Krispie treats.
We did some interesting things with popcorn.
I remember the popcorn.
Yeah, we had something.
You guys were on the first cutting edge of everything.
We were.
Is he loud enough over there?
Popcorn is a little challenging to make, but yeah,
we remember all this.
This is long before you had to worry about things like testing and all of that sort of stuff. But so we made some hard candies. We made tinctures, and we made a family of topicals. We started out, as most did, using canna butter. Actually using flour as the starting point.
Yeah.
And although we shifted to concentrate about 2016, it was always our intent to be as whole plant as we could. So our focus has always been to use non-winterized raw cannabis oil, and we track the terpene.
Non-winterized.
Non-winterized.
So I haven't heard that phrase.
It's normally winterization removes your fats, your lipids, and most of the other non-cannabinoid or terpene-related content in cannabis oil. So it's a standard practice to put them through that winterization process for additional distillation and remove all those compounds. From our perspective, we look at the plant and the value it provides, and as you know, in some respects, cannabis is a giant black box. We know that there's as good that comes from it as the output. We know that it's a plant that's been around for thousands of years.
Yeah.
We know from, frankly, a lot of studies, but they're limited in terms of not having clinical trials, that individual cannabinoids or groups of cannabinoids can have certain prominent effects. So our belief is we don't really fully understand what's in the black box, but we know it's good. And so we want as much of the cannabis product represented in the final product as possible. And that's why we don't use winterized oil. One other side benefit is those fats and lipids actually provide a terrific medium for the cannabinoids to reside in. And when it finally does make it into your digestive tract, it actually is better absorption. So you get higher bioavailability when you use that approach.
And so this process is represented in some of your current products.
Pretty much everything with the exception of topicals. In the case of topicals, we've kept our tradition, and this is unusual. We've always used flour. So we do something kind of curious with it. We take our flour, we grind it up, and then we put it into the base oils that are used to make our suite of topical products. We allow the cannabinoids to leach out in that heated base oil for a specific period of time at a particular temperature that enables us to not just partially decarboxylize the cannabis and take THCA and convert to THC, but we don't go through the full process. We retain the precursors, the THCAs, the CBDAs, the CBGAs, and so forth. And those precursors those acidic precursors of cannabinoids are actually been shown to also have very significant effects when applied topically.
And let's before we get into the products and the science of it, which is I know you have a legendary reputation over the years as one of the experts, the science guys in the cannabis space. Let's go back a little bit to the history. So in 2013, Halo opens. You guys start your brand as well that year. And let's go through how to where you're at now, because now I refer to you as one of the top mom and pop independent brands groups in the industry. But let's get to you want to jump through that little
Sure, you bet.
8-year period?
Well, I can
Where
say
were you?
There was an enormous amount of learning that went on. And, we've made our share of mistakes, but we've learned from it. Classic one would be when you send off a aqueous product, whether it's a beverage or a hot sauce.
Do you got some hot sauce over there?
I'm sorry, what did you call the product again?
Either hot sauce or perhaps
aqueous.
a beverage. Aqueous, yeah.
Aqueous.
Basically, principally having water as a major compound.
Yes.
Okay.
And as many know, cannabinoids don't particularly care for H2O. They're bipolar in nature, and they want to run from. So, for example,
Go ahead.
With a product that has a great deal of H2O content, you're going to have cannabinoids, unless you're using isolate or something that's otherwise been modified, you're going to see those cannabinoids run away. And the first place they're going to go is to the surface of a bottle. So, one of the early things we learned was we weren't getting the amount of cannabinoids out of the product that we expected. And we worked with our labs and found out that it was still in the bottle attached to the glass. Well, this is one of those early lessons that when you're doing formulation, you're going to run across, you're going to learn. And it was that kind of thing and other things that, we were, I would say, a couple years ahead of the testing protocols and the testing requirements, because we were already doing that for years and really trying to understand where were the cannabinoids going, what was causing them to be retained or otherwise disappear. And that's turned into a lot of longer-term research to try to understand how the cannabinoids may or may not degrade based on a production, what happens with that product. Because the end result is really the critical thing, but you want to understand what happens when you bake something or, mix it with something else. Obviously, you need consistency, and that's a challenge to get to. We, about a year ago, spent over $40,000 for, believe it or not, a low-end machine that all it does is cut brownies to a very precise size.
Right.
And I say it's low-end because you can buy one with more motors and more automation. But to spend $40,000 just on something to ensure that brownie is exactly the right size.
Precise dosing.
You want to be certain that when it goes to testing, it's exact, that the customers get that consistency in terms of the product and the experience. And so we've been really focused on that for a long time. The products we developed over time have partially been driven by industry demand. Gummies, we didn't come to the market early with gummies, but we were very serious about the products when we introduced them. And in fact, there's two.
Rice Krispie treats are gone?
Rice Krispie treats are still around.
Oh, they're still around?
Surprisingly, that's a big favorite. People love them. It's a funny thing. Yeah.
Popcorn's still around?
Popcorn has gone away. There are other suppliers here in Arizona that.
Well, you can bring them back, like Coke Classic.
It's so hard to test that.
Oh, is that the problem?
It's so hard to test popcorn.
Like a limited edition kind of thing. You bring it out and say it's only here for a limited time.
You got to pass testing with muster with the state. Now, you could do it, test it, and accept the test results for whatever they are. But our focus has always been targeted processes, define the product. It's an anathema to us to have to ship a product with a different dosage label on it than was intended. You know, consistency is a challenge, but it's a critical thing. The testing, as you know, is always a bit of a challenge. Your labs will give you plus or minus 20%. Not all of them have exactly the same sample preparation methodologies. And so when we've done studies where we've sent brownies to, say, 5 or 6 different labs, we get somewhat different results. And understanding the realities of that is important in terms of trying to, you know, overcome it.
You know, I'm putting my I wore my thinking hat, by the way, because I knew this was. I mean, he's a high level dude. He's a wildcat. He's a scientist. You know, this man is a tremendous asset to the cannabis world. How does that?
I really love how you know all the basics behind it.
He's the secret behind Halo. I mean, for years, everybody.
The secret behind Halo is my staff.
Educated.
To be honest with you, I'm the guy who points and shouts.
Well, it's always important. It's important to have somebody behind the brand that actually knows, you know, what the heck's going on and what the product is being put out on the shelves.
Thank you.
But I'm trying to remember there's been a few individuals I've gotten to know from Halo over the years, and they always just would show up at the MITA events with great products, and everybody would rage about them. But you were like hidden stuff. I know you came and talked once.
You know, it's hard to get away with all the other stuff we're doing, but I will be coming back. We recently hired Susie Tracy into our marketing department. She has a lot of great experience. She's representative of the ads and the work we've been doing. And for those of us that have followed us over the years, we'll see kind of a new image that's evolving, a lot more emphasis on the younger folks. Clearly, they're a greater fraction of our consumers. And we just want to get it exciting. We believe it's a tremendous industry. We love the youth aspect of the culture. We've already talked about how it's wonderful to participate in something that it's the very beginning of. I mean, for you and me, maybe it doesn't feel like that because we've seen so much. But for folks that's starting now, it's like after a year, you're an old timer,
right? Because
you've pretty much figured out a lot of stuff. And that's the cool thing is the people I know today that I've been working with. I've seen my staff have children, buy houses. You know, I've seen their lives progress.
It's family at that point.
It is. It truly is.
And it's good that you're doing this podcast so people can get to know who you are, so they can bump into you at a conference or at a meet event and say, "Hey, Murray, I saw you about this. You were talking about aqueous," and that's interesting because other people don't use that word, and I want to know more. You know, and then you can teach, which is part of the. It's also Socratic, Aristotle, Plato type stuff. You know, it's all about teaching the next generation. Until Alexander comes, I guess.
Yeah,
something like that. I remember my philosophy, Alexander at the end. So we're getting to where Halo is today. So now Halo is as a mom and pop manufacturer, you're an independent manufacturer. I know you put the retail component to the side for somebody else to handle. So your energies are focused on manufacturing.
Right. So after 10 years, we looked at the market. We looked at where the industry was. We looked at adult use and what that had done. And we realized it was probably a pretty good time to consider monetizing the license and what we had done. So we talked to about 10 different suitors, a number of the big MSOs, a number of the smaller multi-dispensary operators in Arizona, and finally a couple small ones. We got 9 different offers of successfully increasing price, which caused us to think, well, there's an opportunity here. And finally, we sold to George Roop down in Tucson. He had a substantial cultivation going. I think he was working with Prime Leaf.
Yep.
Yeah, shout out to George Roop. We love George.
George is
head
great.
grower over there at Prime.
Tucson Cannabis Campus.
Yes, and his passion for flower mirrors ours for edibles. But in talking to all these MSOs and also to George, we realized that a lot of folks really are so focused on the flower, the 68% of the market that flower represents, and not including concentrates and extracts and so forth. So that was really where his expertise and focus is. And when we talked to the MSOs who had kitchens, those that didn't, it occurred to us that they didn't really fully understand the whole production aspects of a kitchen and the challenges of doing that, which is way different from flower. And at the same time, as we began to look at our team and talk about what we built, we realized that the nicest and best thing we could do without actually affecting our sales price was to go ahead and spin the kitchen off. So we went into kind of a silent mode at that point.
I love the move, by the way. That's brilliant.
Thank you.
I'm a licensing expert, and I love that. Very well done.
Well, we were lucky that George was agreeable to a long-term manufacturing contract, and that we had strategic views that were in parallel in terms of the market. But what this allowed us to do was actually focus on infused products, topical products, sublingual products, and so on. we also realized that we could develop that staff expertise internally because we need to. And then most recently, as part of our strategic plan, we've determined that we've just started construction. We expect a completion in mid-2023 of a brand new, it'll be the largest in the state at the time, over 7,000 square foot of production and manufacturing space.
So you guys are building a giant manufacturing center. It's independently owned, and you guys will be able to produce these wonderful products that you're constantly evolving with your level of expertise, laser focused. And you'll also be able to white label and sub-manufacture for other brands?
Yeah, thank you for mentioning that. So the real opportunity for us is to provide an entry point for all the smaller players. We were a smaller player. We may have been early, but we were a small player. And there are bigger folks than we are, to be sure, out there doing a great job. Some of them are out of state. Some of them are in-state brands. But for us, in looking at the overall market, and you and I have a very similar view of the enormous opportunity, provided that you can get a leg up. And the challenges with so many of the current infused brands is they're either overwhelmed by the market, the amount of marketing to get visibility, now it's a fight for shelf space. All of those things are a bit of a challenge. From our perspective, though, to come into the state, whether you're a large national brand or even a small brand trying to get your legs here in Arizona, it's really challenging because you have to find a license to operate under.
Right.
And that can be expensive, more expensive than a small player could afford.
Very, very expensive.
And in addition, you don't really have the fundamental infrastructure to support this through testing, quality control, the compliance issues of inventory management that do land on the dispensary licensee, but are now maybe shifted over to the sub-licensee, whoever it is that's making brands. Well, they can't really shift that off the responsibility license and license holder. And one of the few little-known facts in our industry is there's been many hundreds of thousands of dollars of fines levied toward dispensaries, cultivations, and infused products vendors because they failed to meet statute. So, we've built a team that we believe can do that for these smaller brands. So our hope is to offer the facilities, including white labeling for small dispensaries wanting to build brands, as well as out-of-state brands, regardless of their size, that needs the infrastructure to support the development. They can do their marketing, put their energy where getting their message out is critical. We'll worry about the boring details.
You're going to be like America in the 19th century, like, give me your hunger, your poor. They're all going to come to you. I was actually thinking, like, to myself to ask you what would make the ideal partner. What are you looking for? But I'm not going to ask you that because I just want them all to come to you. And why? Because those who you realize aren't ideal partners, I know you're a good guy. So you'll, like Mark Cuban on Shark Tank, you'll say, well, you guys really need to look at this and then come back and talk to us.
Yep.
But there's tons of great mom and pops, visionaries, entrepreneurs, innovators in the state of Arizona, California, across the country, in other countries. There's stuff being created and evolving and experimented with.
And, it's the innovation. It's really the innovation that these smaller companies are able to do. We've been doing some really close look at the industry, and the interesting thing about it is the stories you see behind how some of these smaller vendors came to be, these smaller infused vendors. Often there's a very personal story about somebody who's had to deal with the care of an elderly individual. In some cases, it's people who returned from a war zone and found that cannabis made a big difference in terms of quality of life. But you see all these different stories of the smaller players and what motivated them to get into it. And you can't not feel for them and feel for the opportunity that they've got ahead of them. It's exciting to be able to, frankly, rub shoulders with these people that have so much passion. Yeah,
it's interesting because you do have the passion of the OG legacy, community, which is very important, but you also have the science. And it's coming from both directions. There'll be the R&D labs, scientifically understanding cannabis and coming up with this. Then there'll be the grandmother's recipe from some mountains in Mexico that mixed rubbing alcohol and ginger and cannabis that somehow worked to heal. Just so there's all kinds of different relationships with cannabis across the world.
Yep.
And as long as you're open-minded to both of them, you can, they're all going to come to you, and then you can figure out, well, which ones do I work with, and you can work scientifically to figure out which ones are the best, which is, I think it's really cool. Does your manufacturing center have a name yet?
We're just going to go with Halo Infusions.
Halo Infusions?
Greater minds than mine may come up with a better moniker in time.
Yeah.
But right now, that's just the brand. All of our other, the 5 brands that we currently make, Aunt Ellie's is a baked goods product. Canna Confections is confectionery, chocolate, and those sorts of things. Pure and Simple is a beverage product line. Cannabis is sort of a snack line where we do our hot sauces and our gummy products. And we're getting ready to introduce a pet product line called Canine CBD Therapy. We're very excited about that. We have a lot of pet owners. A lot of people love dogs. And our own experience with using tinctures in the past has allowed us to come up with a very favorable formulation. We also have several other products in that product line, and you'll be seeing all of that in the early part of next year.
And so if people want to get in touch with you, email is the best way, I think you were saying?
Yep.
Murray.stein@haloinfusions.com.
Halo
Infusions. And we'll on our website will be your LinkedIn, Instagram, and all those other things as well. But I like making sure, because people just real quickly want to email you, because I think your guys' laser focus on production, the fact that you have a manufacturing facility and your doors are open to innovators, ideas, entrepreneurs, it's a beautiful thing. That's the spirit of the cannabis industry.
Well, it absolutely is. When you mentioned the science part, it's really important to us to understand what's in these products and what stays in these products. As we've looked at the competitive market, there's been a tendency, a move toward putting in 3 cannabinoids, maybe 4, putting them in a particular ratio of some sort, and claiming some lifestyle benefit. Maybe it helps with your sleep, helps with stress, gives you more energy, and so on.
Yeah.
The challenge with this is there isn't really very much literature, if any, that talks about cannabinoid profiles in terms of ratios. So the idea of a THC to CBD ratio, we know CBD mitigates the effects of THC, but we don't know to what extent. And when you look at the bioavailability of cannabis, THC, you're lucky to get more than 15% of the THC you consume into your system. The other's filtered out by your lungs. Mm-hmm. You can do things like sublingual approaches in terms of in the mouth and get some absorption, so avoid the first pass through the liver. But frankly, we're still always going to be dealing with a mere fraction of the amount of THC or CBD or whatever that physically makes it into our system. So you want to take advantage, you want to manifest that and be on top of it so that you know what effects it has. But the reality is that there really isn't a lot of support for the fact that multiple cannabinoids do provide synergism. There was a terrific study done in Israel a few years back where they were studying a particular type of cancer, and they were doing this in a Petri dish to see if they could constrain the growth of the cancer. And they found that they were very effective at that in this particular case. With cannabis, with cannabinoids. And so they actually noticed after about 6 or 9 months of research that it wasn't working anymore, that it weren't killing the cancer cells. So they looked through all their protocols. They checked everything in the lab. They looked at the testing methodologies. Finally, they went back to their cultivator, and they said, well, we've been using this particular strain for all this time. It's had this effect. What's going on? And the cultivator went through his records and says, well, we had to introduce a new phenotype. Because whatever the source of that cannabis, the mother plant or whatnot, was no longer available. And in switching to that different phenotype, they lost one of the cannabinoids expression. And the result of this accident, if you will, showed them that those 3 key cannabinoids had a direct and significant effect on that particular kind of cancer. So we do know that they can work in concert with each other. We do know that there's a lot of synergy between them. It's going to take a fair amount of research to really understand that. Mm-hmm. For us, our goal is to put as many cannabinoids in the product as we can. Obviously, we have to test to the standards of THC or CBD, note that on the product and so forth. But we want to maximize the minor cannabinoids. And in the case of our topicals, those precursors, the THCAs, CBDAs, and so on.
I want to put, I have come to understand my substance use in coffee over the last 10 years.
Caffeine.
And how I use caffeine as a drug, effectively at times and excessively at other times. I really need I need the cannabis industry to study coffee. Could you imagine how we can evolve this?
Well, I'll say watch this space. We had a coffee product for quite a long time. Maintaining a coffee profile is very challenging. And, the coffee aficionados, they come out of the woodwork when you do that. But you're really looking for a mainstream kind of person to really test those products. We have a brand new set of product line of our juices that will include a chai tea and then eventually, hopefully, another coffee. Oh, yeah, we had great success.
Chai tea.
What you see here, though, is these are frozen beverages. So they're manufactured, they're frozen, and when you crack them open in the fridge, then they begin their formal shelf life.
About the products, we're just starting to talk about the big product selection you guys have with Halo, which, as we know, coming from you, everything's high quality. And well, it always has been, but we've never had a conversation this length. I've heard you in presentations talk about the science of the plant, but and I know you have that OG love and legacy market love for the plant as well. So
yeah, I love that there's actually behind the scenes is a team like George Roop, Tucson Cannabis Campus. Like you were saying, the whole part of the product is from the flower.
Yeah.
But those companies that will survive, I believe, will be the ones that merge what people refer to as the legacy, the OG, the traditional, the markets that haven't even been discovered yet in the mountains of Thailand, with the science, the R&D, what the traditional Western world of, I don't know what you would call it, demands. I'm more of like a plant-based alternative remedy guy now. I like to keep it simple, but I get there's the reality of standards and all this kind of stuff. So you got to merge the two. Sorry about that. But let's get into some of the products that Halo has to offer now. Maybe we can start from this side over here.
So right in front of you is a couple, 2 of the 3 versions of a particular syrup we introduced a while back. The unique thing about these is they're really intended for use in cooking. They can be treated as a drink additive. Very accurate dosing with these. A lot of people will use them to do meal prep. So it's sort of that extra vector beyond just using a syrup to medicate with.
Yeah.
So we found a lot of terrific recipes. A number of consumers of ours have come back to us and told us different things they've made. There's been quite a few articles focused on that. This is a different approach to a tincture or syrup than you would normally see because of the unique taste profiles we've added through the addition of various ingredients.
So this one's citrus, that one's herb.
Yeah.
I noticed you say that they use it with cooking. So is there a certain temperature that needs to be, like, can it be, I've heard if you have cannabis when you're cooking, if you make it too hot, it deactivates the THC. Is that correct?
What it'll do is it'll cause initially all of the cannabinoids to degrade. THC itself, even given sufficient time and heat, will turn into something like CBN.
Okay.
So you're going to have issues with degradation. Now, generally speaking, most of the approaches, most of the things you're likely to make with cannabis and with extract is probably going to do a reasonable job of surviving, simply because the temperatures of cannabinoid degradation are typically higher than most of the production temperature used to make things. The question is, what happens to the terpenes? Because they don't necessarily stick around. They're very volatile. The unique aspects of terpenes in our combination with cannabinoids is what's got a lot of industry excited, because it's the logical extension of the entourage effect. And we know from experience, a lot of experience and a lot of studies, that the aroma of cannabis, which is a result of the terpenes, that can have an impact on one's just how you feel. Limonene, which is a classic concentrate, it's very lemony, sounds like lemon zest, actually boosts your mood. So are these terpenes actually being felt in the same way once they're ingested? That's one of the big questions. But we believe so, based on our experience. And so one of the great opportunities is, how do you find the ability to combine those terpenes and ensure they remain stable? And as you said earlier, Dimitri, it's what's going to come out of some other unique place, some other part of the world perhaps, that becomes a combination, an additive to the cannabinoids to truly make them effective.
Well, syrup is my choice. You're going to have to leave one of these bottles here, because I realized back in 2013 when I was starting to understand and come to understand the cannabis space, the true medicinal therapeutic value. I used to be kind of like addicted to NyQuil in college in the early 90s.
That was all the study.
And so I was like, okay, it's natural. I can do some
Sprite.
syrup. And I started to try the syrups, and boom, I slept like a baby.
Yep.
I was like, one day, cannabis is totally going to replace NyQuil. And just that market alone is massive.
I'm telling you, if
That was my experience,
If you're
sir.
an inexperienced edible user and you take just a fraction of one of our gummies,
Mm-hmm.
you have the best night's sleep ever.
Yeah.
If you're somebody who uses cannabis regularly, just have a whole gummy. It's amazing what they can do when ingested. And, of course, when they go through your GI tract, they're there longer, so you have a more sustained experience. But I totally hear you about syrups.
No, so why is it with syrups that it works better for me for sleeping? Because I've had gummies for sleeping, but they don't like knock me out. The syrups actually I mean,
I'm going to say that comes down to individual experience.
Probably takes more to digest.
Well, in the
like
case
that.
of syrups,
Your
we use a
body?
glycerin base,
that.
and we use it because, in our experience, it's proven to be a healthier base.
Yeah.
It's easier to digest.
yes.
You tend not to have allergies with it the way you can with coconut oil and some other things, and it's clearly regarded as healthier.
That appeals to my libertarian understanding of the world. It clearly comes down to you, Dimitri.
Yes, I think so. So what you've got in your hands there is a chocolate bar. That's a white chocolate bar.
I like the milk chocolate.
Can of Confections.
Yes, that's one of our oldest brands.
We're going to ruin the display here as we go.
We're gonna start eating
these
it as we go.
Unique aspect about these, because many people can make chocolate, is that we actually get the most expensive European Belgian chocolate we can,
Belgian
because
chocolate.
of the fat content, which is frankly higher, but it just tastes better. So rather than just make an inexpensive chocolate bar, we've always focused on you're going to have a small part of this. Let's go with quality. So most people who try them compare them to your more traditional American chocolates and find that they're much tastier. These are available in 100 milligram and I believe a 500 milligram version. I believe we
Like
have
you
now.
guys go higher?
Oh yes. In fact, one of the biggest parts of the industry, believe it or not, this is toward the medical side, Dimitri, actually is the larger milligram products. They're among the best sellers today is 500 and 1,000 milligram products.
You guys do a thousand
Not yet, but
milligram
we've got
bar?
plans. We've got plans. Yeah.
That's
Right now our
something I
fun-
know that the medical industry looks for a lot.
Absolutely, and it's been surprising for us to find out just how popular those are. They're, again, whether it's chocolate bars or a brownie, if you go 1,000 milligrams, that's a key opportunity in our market today.
And just for medical as well, because I think legal market you can't get.
No, absolutely not.
I think the cap is at 500 milligrams.
Actually, it's at 100.
Is it at
milligram.
100?
You're limited to 100
Oh,
milligrams.
poor you guys.
Yeah, well, it's not such a bad deal with something like chocolate because the adult use, if somebody really wants the extra kick, they'll either have more of that same
Right.
product or they'll go to get our license, which is not near as expensive as it used to be since they've changed those rules. And when you look at the pricing of things, it's smart to get your medical card. It really is.
I absolutely agree. I really want to see the medical market and the medical side of it continue to evolve, the research, the opportunity, the tax savings. I'd like to, personal goal, to try to get it down to zero tax for medical.
Patients have
That's my
always
goal.
been that. That was the biggest motivation I think, aside from our staff, that caused us to do this. Is when we're working in a dispensary, there's quite an opportunity when you walk through there and spend time there to be approached by customers. And I've lost track of the number of times somebody's grandmother or great aunt has stopped me and then hugged me in tears because what we do, what many do in our industry, is actually provide relief. It changed the quality of her life.
Yeah, definitely.
And,
Just wrote down the potential bills. I have a list, zero tax on medical.
There you go.
I'm going to get that. We'll get that
I think
done.
that would be terrific. I think it would be terrific when rescheduling or descheduling occurs, that the VA, our veterans, are able to get it and have it be paid for by taxpayer dollars.
Before we move on to the salsa, because I see the salsa's next, we're passing over Woodstock and Yoda. So just real quickly, have you just take a 1 minute detour here, little squirrel? Have you looked at psilocybin at all? Have you, your expertise and your level of understanding things is astute, it's scientific? It's
I think psilocybin is incredible. I think the future, particularly dealing with things like emotional issues,
Depression,
PTSD,
anxiety.
depression. Thank you. I'm not convinced the microdosing approach necessarily has the impact. I mean, there's lots of discussion about it, but my reading and from talking to a lot of folks who work in that industry, or a few that work in the industry but have been involved in it for a long time, their view is you need more moderate dosing. You're going to trip if you're going to really get the benefit out of that. But it doesn't have to be something that lays you back for days. It's just, a couple hours of a little bit of mild hallucination.
2 grams.
And the reframing of things, the way it virtually rewires your brain, is just really profound. So It's going to take state action to make psilocybin happen locally, just as it has just recently in Colorado. But I'm hopeful that by the time we have universal availability of cannabis in this country, which is rescheduling or descheduling, the Biden administration has a charter to do that. When they allowed for, frankly, a small number, but not an insignificant number of federal cannabis convictions to be reversed. One of the things that Biden did is he directed the Department of Health Services to evaluate the effective use of cannabis.
Spring of 2025.
Yes. So there's still an opportunity, and I do think we'll see rescheduling or descheduling, and that will have a big impact.
Spring of 2025. It's either going to be a Democratic president who's going to be like, okay, cool, whatever, or a Republican president who's like, okay, this is a business. Yeah. Let's just get
I like
take
the
care
revenue.
Of.
Yeah.
It just, and then it's going to be over. It's going to be less.
Yep.
They're just going to want to tax
but
it
I think
too.
psilocybin is one of those things that definitely is warrants watching.
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah, well, we have this biannual psilocybin retreat to San Jose del Pacifico, so you've earned yourself an invitation to it.
Terrific.
So, yeah, in case you want to go.
Oh, you have to come. It's lots of fun.
It sounds
It's
like it would be
interesting.
It's a
really
group
interesting.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's move on to the salsa, because that's pretty cool.
So these actually were the brainchild of the kitchen staff, and those guys are like engineers. You know, I spent a number of years in Silicon Valley, and with companies, in the computer industry that were driving their products. You know, marketing played a role, but it was the engineers who really understood the future. They were looking at the technology. And in some ways, our kitchen is actually a terrific font of information and guides because they're thinking about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So these recipes actually emerged from them.
Oh,
This guy was involved.
Let me say this correctly. Worcestershire.
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 Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire sauce. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Worcester.
So this is actually a hot sauce. The other one you're holding, Dimitri, is a green one. And we have, speaking to salsa, we have some initial thoughts about a family of those products that we think would be very exciting. You know, it's interesting, specific to Arizona, how these have done so well here because it's Arizona. But we're very excited to develop these, and we're looking at more.
You guys have like taco parties and stuff?
When they do a
Salsa on
photo
the
shoot,
tacos?
yes. When they do a photo shoot.
You know, that's interesting because that feeling you get in the back of your mouth when you're about to have like a candy or something or spicy sauce? I have like a double physical reaction to this.
Well,
you know, I'm like,
you take them home and you
spicy.
try them.
We
You
got
tell
some
me what you
French
think.
fries out here. You can
Spicy. Okay,
So,
and
moving on to the we have currently 4 flavors is a frozen beverage. This is 100 milligram. I believe this is 5 ounces. Is that correct, Brandon? 8 ounces. Thank you. And those are very successful. Basically, they're delivered to dispensaries. They're maintained frozen on site, and then they sell to consumers who take them home, put them in the fridge, and they're retained there for a number of weeks. If they open them, then they've got about a week to consume them. And these have been really successful.
So you're saying you could open it, take a few sips, and put it back in the fridge, and then it's lasts about a week? Okay.
Yeah, lasts about a week.
so yeah, I've always wondered about the expiration date on things. A lot of people don't talk about that in the industry.
They don't, but they're starting to have to.
Yeah.
And our plans in terms of have begun labeling Best by Use by in a couple of our products, and that's extending across the product line over the next few months. Brandon's actually a major driver of that because safety is a consideration. You know, in the case of these frozen beverages, the production process involves actually doing a kill step. We go through and do the pasteurization, and then they're filled into the bottles together with the cannabis oil that we use. It's actually a tincture type a product in that manner, in that the tincture includes formulation that allows the cannabinoids to remain in suspension, and then when that is added to the aqueous portion, the actual juice itself, we've done tests to make sure it stays there. You can only put so many cannabinoids into H2O before it just does its thing. So
It's like oil. Is it like oil? You know how oil sits on top?
Yeah, our actual dosing methodology is using a glycerin base that we put the cannabis in, but we also employ lecithin, which is a common use in our industry. Lecithin becomes something that
What is that?
Lecithin, Lecithin.
Is that what I saw on here?
You
The-
probably
the-
will see that.
The old prosecutor in me takes 2 notes here. One is conversation, things that I need to get
No,
to,
it's not in here.
got to track things, points and stuff. The other one is I create these like little circles. Google that later. So I
don't
put it
know.
over here.
Well,
Google that.
We use soy lecithin. There are other folks that will use sunflower lecithin, but it's a really common mechanism for binding the cannabinoids and trying to maintain them in solution. And as I said, aqueous products, even these two, have a fair bit of water in them. Even the hot sauces do. The exciting thing about the beverages, though, is it's a healthy mechanism. For a lot of folks who, have issues with eating or whatnot, it's terrific. It also has a sublingual component. When you drink a beverage, you slosh around your mouth a little bit, you get a measure of absorption from it. And so when my team, for example, participates in shelf life studies, they'll have a little bit of a sip, they'll spit it out. They're still wasted after an hour, of testing, 10 of these.
It already hit the bloodstream.
Sublingual administration is huge in terms of rapid onset of products. The exciting thing about these is we're working on the final stages of getting ready to introduce a new version of these products. They're actually going to go into a different bottle, but we're using a hot fill method. So we go directly from pasteurization to bottle fill at temperature at several hundred degrees or approaching several hundred degrees. Goes into a glass bottle that's been pre-nitrogen filled,
right,
which ensures that you don't have a whole lot of air in it that reduces microbial. And those will be refrigerated, ready to drink. So
those are glass. There's a plastic over here,
plastic now, but you'll see a new line with the same names coming out that are going to be refrigerated, ready to drink, which we think will be far more consumer friendly, give you a substantial shelf life refrigerated, and so on.
So are these refrigerated ready to drink?
They are now because they've defrosted, but they would normally be frozen when they're delivered, and consumers will purchase them frozen. It's not as convenient as buying something that's refrigerated, which is a major factor. So we'll complement this set of beverages with a chai tea formulation we've done, which has been very popular in the past.
You keep getting me with that chai tea. That chai tea.
All else being equal, glass, plastic, or metal containers, which is the best?
I'm not a fan of metal.
It's a good question, right?
Yeah, I think glass personally.
Cannabinoids can have some challenges sticking to aluminum type materials, or something that's coated aluminum. But there is a recycling aspect about the metal containers that I very much favor. Glass is another reason that I like it. I think in the coming years there'll be far more focus on sustainable packaging. But for now, the glass bottles give us the ability to do a hot fill. I could use bottles like this, but I would be concerned about warping or other impacts of plastic. And the reality is, plastic is not really my favorite type of packaging or anything for that matter. It's become
kind of cheapy feeling
cheapy
versus
feeling.
glass.
Tell me something, because as I'm learning more from you, when other brands who have a great story and a great idea come to you to white label, will you also help them enhance their
we will work with them
scientific understanding
to
of
whatever extent they need. A part of our plans for the new kitchen involves a testing lab internally.
Yeah.
It won't be there to meet statutory requirements, but it'll be there to do intermediary testing of products so they know exactly what they're putting in there. But basically, we'll provide whatever level of service. We expect that we're going to have some folks we may work with that they're going to have their own team come in, use specific parts of the kitchen for their facility, but they'll operate under our compliance requirements, our inventory management requirements, and so on. So we'll be standing there to audit what they do. I think in many more cases, we'll have folks that'll come and say, I've got this great idea for a product. I want to do so-and-so. And then we'll use, it's not just our manufacturing and our technical prowess that can support them, but also we have a distribution system already set up, and they'll be able to rely on that for making
absolutely. You guys are going to have a waiting list out the door. I mean, a company, I mean, there's great guys out there with great products, the 420, not 420, but 420 is great too, but 40 ton who's coming this way, Beard Bros is coming this way, and they're going to say, well, we don't want somebody just to hand us a key to get a little thing or to turn our brand over to them. We want somebody with the level of expertise that can look at this so they know that when working with you and your manufacturing center, they also get their eyes.
And they know that
they write that into the contract.
We're going to care about that a lot because our license holder, George Roop, is going to make sure we do. So our contracts basically place liability and burden on us to ensure that he's kept safe and happy, and that's I think he's willing to do that, has been willing to do that because of the expertise we've developed.
Of course, their names behind the brand. Of course, people people care what's being put out there. I know a person like George Roop, of course.
So we're down to like the last 2 or 3 minutes. So let's go through these other brands.
So a couple other products.
Other products.
I'm holding up here. This is a sour gummy product we introduced recently. Again, very different formulation than what you're used to.
These are the ones. When I bring them close,
what's going to really?
If I bring them close, I'll have that big reaction. You know what I'm saying? It's so weird.
Well, you need to turn it around though.
I just know it's coming. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You know that? Feel that?
These are the ones that are going to get you very excited though. These are spicy. We use habanero with these, and I grew up in an adjacent state, so I don't know quite the experience with spicy candy that so many of my employees do, but these spicy gummies are considered spectacular. Really looking forward to hear about that. And then the other things that we've got just over to the side here, there's a brownie, which is a classic packaging.
Oh, there's that brownie we were talking
there's
about.
That brownie. This is 100 milligram. It's got lines on it to designate the dosing if anybody's really that worried about it.
Oh wow! You can just cut it up at your.
You can
cut
it up. Yep, and that's according to meet state requirements. And then next to that is some topicals and tinctures. As I mentioned, we're very focused on whole plant, so we go to a lot of effort to work with crude cannabis oil or with flower in the case of our topicals. So these represent different sizes of the 3 core topical and tincture products. THC rich, which means that we're going to target THC for the dosage on it, but carry along all of the minor cannabinoids. So you might actually get a % or 2 of CBD in some cases. Then you have CBD rich. We're using actual hemp material, hemp CBD oil or hemp flower, same processes to produce those. And in the middle, and this is really where we think the emphasis should be, is 1-to-1. It's relatively easy to hit that using crude material, where 65% of our material is THC, and the other 35% is all the other stuff, lesser cannabinoids, terpenes, terpenoids, flavonoids. Almost 10% of cannabis can be flavonoids, which now been shown to have anti-cancer properties.
I'm learning so much from you. Just
I know.
Saying. Like these words you're throwing out there, I'm like, okay, go Google that later.
Well, we're just
I know the laws.
We're so excited about what's in this plant, and we want to get it out, and we're able to do that really effectively with the flower. I mean, I will go to a dispensary and
I can vouch for that stuff, by the way.
Thank you, because we will. I just recently in a dispensary local to us in Tucson, we've been trying to get our topicals in there, and of course they've got other products they carry. And I said, look, I'm going to send some samples over. You give these to your mom, who you've told me you have arthritis. If she's happy, you give me a call. Well, we got an order 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
And it's just because of the experience. So if you have aches and pains, really, it's topicals are amazingly effective at doing that. Really, truly are. And this one and our 1-to-1 product are really the most successful.
No, that one's amazing. I have a little mild arthritis myself, so I use it for my back, my hands, everything.
And we haven't got into a lot of the unshackle stuff today, which is like the little ins and outs, secrets, a lot of stuff we could talk about the industry.
So you'll bring me back.
No, I mean, but this is the reason why we created MITA Unshackled or a MITA podcast, because people don't. I know you a little bit. I know Murray's the expert over there. He's got great products. He's chilling in Tucson doing his own thing. But now we got a chance to set you out into the world digitally. There might be some random person in Australia who picks this up. You never know what's going to happen digitally. But we got the honor of presenting you to the cannabis community in general, which is thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and let us know what we can do to help you guys. You're going to have a line out the door of people looking to white label and manufacture with you. Hopefully you'll give some of the underdogs a chance, lift them up,
Gotcha.
Be the nice shark on Shark Tank. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much. And that was another episode of MITA Unshackled.
Yes.